Alright, Matt from Sleeve Notes here, and it is time for our first ever Top 10 Tuesday. Obviously, the channel is new, so we've not had a chance to do this yet, but basically, as the name suggests, a top 10 list, could be songs by an artist, albums by an artist, bands of a specific genre, whatever. Every Tuesday, a top 10 list in that category. And today, for the first ever one, I thought, well, since my video that went out yesterday was the review for the new Metallica album, I thought we would start with top 10 Metallica albums, because with the release of that album, it now makes 10 studio releases. Before you would have had to include Garage Inc., but now we don't have to, so we can literally put them in order of what I think is worst to best. Now, obviously, it might seem at the minute like this is just a Metallica themed channel, but that is not correct. It's just that I thought, while we're in the mood of it, while we're in the swing, we just carry on with this sort of theme. So, here goes. I'm gonna rank the albums in my personal preference, and I'll give you a few reasons why each one is in the position that it's in. So in 10th place, the last position, holding the rest of them up, is Reload 1997 release, the second in the two Load albums, which were originally considered for a double album and then released sort of separately. This album it's not a bad album, but it is my least favourite of them all, and there are a few reasons why that is. I'll start with the positives. It's a very consistent and solid record, arguably their most consistent album since that they've made since Justice. And even the early albums, the first couple had definite higher points and lower points, and I feel like this album is generally on one level, which is definitely a positive. It's definitely the heavier of the two loads as well, and I don't think heaviness is everything, but it was cool to get that kind of experimental nature of the first record and take it and put a bit of a heavier spin on it. It's definitely a lot more of a metal album than Load is, and honestly, it still maintains that experimental nature, which is why Load is so great. So those are, having looked at that, I can't really say that Reload is a bad album, because it's all on the same sort of level, which is generally good, and it's an interesting listen. It has a lot of different kind of emotions going into it, a lot of different feelings and styles sort of combining to make actually a pretty decent album. I think the production is great, and the vocals are great as well, and there's no massive flaws to the record, although there are bad points, which is why it is in last place. One of those criticisms would be, there's just not a lot, but a little bit too much filler. Songs like Bad Seed and Attitude and Better Than You kind of seem like they maybe didn't take that long to put together, and they were there to just sort of pad it out a bit. And I don't hate the songs, but they don't really need to be there. They could have been B-sides, they could have been left as demos. I don't think they're that necessary to the album. I don't think it would suffer if you took them out. And I think that's what really drags it down, because it's not very streamlined. I think if you had taken these out and not included them and just focused on the better songs, maybe even improved them a bit more as well, made them even better than they already are, then I think it would just be a more digestible record, and we could sort of flick it on and off, because that's the kind of music that it is. Very easy to come in and come out of, but the amount of songs kind of makes that more difficult to do. And I suppose another major problem with it is, if you listen to it next to Load, I think it just pales in comparison. And I think Load is a good album, and this is an okay album, but in comparison it's just not on the same level. So that kind of, in your mind, I think you kind of have a little bit of of a feeling like this isn't so great, and I think maybe if that had come first, I don't think it would have been. It would feel like that. Load is definitely the stronger of the two records. Maybe they could have just sort of put some of the strongest songs on Load and not, and you know, maybe made a double album, but not all 27 songs that are on both. Maybe like 22 songs, 21 songs or something. That would be an acceptable number. But you know, in general, I think it is still a very underrated album. You know, it definitely has its high points, and you know, I personally still listen to it from time to time and enjoy it, just because it's my least favourite Metallica album. You know, my least favourite Metallica album is still going to be better than my favourite, 50 Cent album, for example. For each album, I'm going to give sort of my two favourites and my two least favourite songs. So my two favourites for Reload are Fixer and Carpe Diem Baby, which I think are actually two of Metallica's best songs altogether. Fixer is, you know, if you listen to it, it's a really interesting song. It's very different to what they normally do, but it's quite a long song. It builds, and I think the vocal effects on the song are cool. The lyrics are good. You know, it's a really great song. And then the second choice, Carpe Diem Baby. I've never really known why I like it so much. I've just always been drawn to it. If I had to choose my two least favourite songs, I'd say Bad Seed is definitely my least favourite song on the album, probably followed by Slither, which I think goes for a kind of... I think the intentions are good, it's just kind of falls a bit short of what it should be. In ninth position, the second lowest position is Death Magnetic. There until just under a week ago, it was their most recent, 2008, and you know, I think the most noticeable part of this album is the return to the kind of old style. You know, they've not really made a thrash album properly since Justice, and this is kind of like it's got that style. It is the thrash album. It's got the progressive elements as well that Justice, Master and Ride had, and the format of the album as well. You know, the way they structure it, the sort of the fast opening song, and then the more progressive. Well, I mean, that isn't there so much. But then the third track is the slower, more mid tempo. Fourth is the ballad. The last song is very fast and powerful. The track before that is instrumental. You know, I think the format of that sort of classic Metallica sort of format, it's pretty obvious if you listen to one of those old albums, and it's there again on Death Magnetic. And this is good because, you know, my favourite most people would agree the best four Metallica albums are the first four. Little spoiler alert, those are my top four. So it was nice to see them going back to that. However, it was also maybe that's also where it has its downfall, because a lot of it kind of feels like they're just going back to there for the sake of it, to please fans. I think the softer moments on the record, and The Day It Never Comes, obviously is very classic Metallica, but The Unforgiven 3 is one of the softest songs they've made, with the little piano intro, and that's one of the most sort of touching songs on the record. And I think the softer moments, and the softer moments in Suicide and Redemption as well, the instrumental, I think the softer moments really are among the highlights of the record. So I do think that maybe going back to that, their roots, if you like, was not in their best interest, because, like I say, some of the softer moments and not the thrashier moments are the better moments. Although that's not true entirely, because All Nightmare Long is a fantastic song, and that's one of the heaviest they've made for a long time. You know, the album as a whole it's a fun listen. It's quite a fun record, and it's very well balanced as well. Like I say, the softer moments are great, and there are some good thrash songs, and they're balanced out really well. The album is paced quite well. But the reason why it's so low, and I think a lot of people put it quite high, mainly through nostalgia with the going back to their old style. But I think aside from the fact that they're possibly just making thrash for the sake of it, the production is not very good. In fact, I'd say it's really quite bad. It's way too loud. The vocals don't sound nice at all. The drums don't either. And that kind of makes a lot of the songs not unlistenable, but a lot worse than they should be, because instrumentally, musically, they're all pretty good. What I would say is it's quite nice to see a return to the more complex writing that was definitely missing on Load and Reload. Overall, for the record, I think really, if they had focused on more variety, like they have on their newest record, it would have come out a lot stronger. Obviously, taken better care in the production, and honestly, if I had to say something, I know a lot of people say they sold out on Load and Reload, but I don't think they do, and I'll address that later in the video. I think if they ever sold out, which I don't think they do, by the way, but if they ever did sell out, I think it was on this album, because this is just making music that the fans want to hear, which I guess is commendable, but also I do think, their quest to replicate, what they think fans want to hear, I think that's kind of got in the way of the music a little bit. Favourite songs would be All Nightmare Long and then The Unforgiven 3. One of my least favourite songs would probably be would be Cyanide and Broken Beat and Scarred. In 8th place is a more controversial one. Saint Anger is my choice for 8th place, and a lot of people put this right at the bottom, and I actually understand why, because I know it's quite a difficult album for a lot of people to listen to, and it's very abrasive, and I think a lot of people kind of felt a bit disappointed, especially after such the clean sounds of the 90s records. I think if they ever wanted to go back to that sort of the old days, I think they would have wanted to do it with a bit more finesse and a bit more of a polished finish than what you get on Saint Anger. But I personally have always really liked the album. I think it's very underappreciated. I think if you look at it, even if you don't like the production, I think if you try to look at it from a songwriting point of view, I think you'll start to accept it a little bit more. It's full of emotion. That's one of the main reasons why I really like it. Actually, it's clearly coming from the heart. Lyrics especially. James is pouring his heart on a lot of this stuff, and the band were in a bad way, and I think they actually do really well to channel that energy. Whilst I don't like the production of the record, really, I like the kind of the garage feel they were going for it, the garage band kind of approach. I think it suits them very well. Obviously, it works on Kill 'Em All, and Kill 'Em All's production isn't that much better than this one, I don't think. So, I don't see that as actually that much of a problem. It seems instrumentally, there's definitely some good stuff on the record. The drums, some of the drum tracks are really good, especially the one for My World, which the song isn't my favourite by any means, but it's a good performance from Lars, and I think a lot of people need to stop confusing drums with drum sound, because one is a production issue, and one is an instrumental issue. The rest of the instruments, there's not really much bass on there. Not particularly notable bass, but there's some really great guitar riffs on here, which Some Kind of Monster is probably my favourite riff. It's got a really good riff, actually. It's definitely one of the most memorable. I found myself humming it for ages after I first listened to the record, and I didn't really know the song that well by then, but I was still humming it, trying to work out what it was. I was like, then I remembered, oh yeah, that's that Metallica song, and yeah, it's it gets stuck in your head so easily. I think the distortion on the guitars is really, really well done as well on that particular song. Obviously the negatives are, like I said, the production. Whilst I don't hate it, I do think it gets a bit too much, especially the songs, because they're a bit long sometimes. Some Kind of Monster, I've just praised it, but it could literally, if it was half the length, I don't think the world would be suffering any great loss. A lot of the songs go on a bit too far, and they often do in Metallica albums, but this is probably where they're most guilty of that. And yeah, I think the production would have been more digestible if the album had been a bit shorter. Um, yeah, I think the main problem with the record though is some of the lyrics are quite bad. Some of them are good, but like I said, there's a lot of emotion in some of them. But some of them, like in Invisible Kid, they're really not good. And I think this is the only album which has songs that I actually don't like. There's a couple of songs which I'm going to mention at the end as my two least favourites, and I don't absolutely hate them, but they're the closest I come to skipping a Metallica song, I think. But generally, the album is very underappreciated because you remember this kind of saved the band. They would have broken up if I think if it wasn't for this album. They vented a lot on here, and if you watch the Some Kind of Monster documentary, you'll actually see the whole album in a new light, and I think you'll come to like it a little bit more and respect it a little bit more. My two favourite songs are The Unnamed Feeling and the title track, Saint Anger. The title track has the sort of some of the good lyrics where he's talking about sort of having anger around his neck, kind of like a medallion or a noose. I think that's great imagery, and The Unnamed Feeling is just a really beautiful song. One of my favourite Metallica songs by far. My two least favourite songs that I mentioned before are actually Invisible Kid and Dirty Window. Dirty Window has kind of a cool bit where he's the judge and the jury and executioner, but apart from that, the song doesn't do much for me. And Invisible Kid, I think, is probably Metallica's worst song by a considerable distance. Now in seventh place is the newest record, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, came out this year, and I'm not going to speak too much about the record because I've just put out a review of the album. I'll put a link to that in the description, but the main positives I can take away from it are that it's like a proper return to form. That they tried to go back to form on Death Magnetic, and sometimes it fell a bit short. This time they actually properly do it, and it's a good return to form. There's not many weak songs. The weak songs aren't really even that weak. They're just kind of weak in comparison to the stronger songs on the record. And maybe it's just 'cause it's fresh in my mind, but I think it already sounds like it's going to have a lot of replay value. It's quite long, yeah, but it goes quite quick because the songs are often quite fun, and then there's some quite powerful and emotional stuff in there as well. Like I said, I'm not going to talk too much in it about it, but the production is fantastic and the vocals are great. The main criticisms are that it's kind of repetitive, the solos aren't great, the drumming kind of gets a bit repetitive, it's too many snare rolls and that, but in general, it's quite a solid album. It's consistent again. They're most consistent since Reload. Saint Anger and Death Magnetic definitely had clear clear low points, and this doesn't really have those, I don't think, or not to the same extreme. Anyway, my two favourite songs on the record are Spit Out the Bone, followed by Moth into Flame, and then my least favourite songs are Man Unkind and Confusion. So sixth is where it starts to get really tough and really close, because the albums, like I say, I like them all, but this is where the quality really, really steps up. In sixth place, I'm putting the Black Album, because it's great because it's first of all, it's aged really well. It still sounds amazingly fresh and smooth and clean. The production is fantastic, probably the best produced album they've had. And it seems very streamlined record, very well rounded album. This is probably the album where they do best at closing songs out. Even on those classic albums, they still sometimes drag on a little bit too long. Not in a bad way, but it could definitely be cut down. This is perfect in that regard. Everything is done. It's just done so professionally. It's a proper professional job, this record, and it seems like so much work and so much time went into it. I do like the more hard rock side of them. It's still a metal album, but it's a lot more closer to hard rock than it is to thrash, and I do like that side of it. Although that's kind of where the negatives come through, because I think it makes it an album which is very easy to listen to, so you can come back to it any time. But at the same time, it's not an album which is gonna like fulfill your need for Metallica, because it's so it's quite basic. Probably their most basic album, actually, I would say. Definitely their least complex, and I think that's particularly hard to take for a lot of fans, because Justice is easily their most complex album, and it follows it. I think a lot of people saw it as selling out. We could argue till the sun goes down about that. It's a good album though. I think it's hard to say that it's not a good album, because it definitely is. It has a lot of replay value as well, and it's another album that's really well balanced. It has just the right amount of soft songs, The Unforgiven and My Friend in Misery, and Nothing Else Matters as well. And Nothing Else Matters, you see a bit of that classic. The solo is great on that song. There's some good riffs on it as well, really good riffs. And Sandman and Wherever I Marry Him are two of the band's best riffs in my opinion. And like I say, the production's fantastic, and the vocals especially. This is where James' vocals were always good, but this is where they start to get really good. These 90s releases are where they're at their best, and this is probably actually the peak of him. They kind of have that anger and the grit of sort of left over from Justice, but in the style he sings on the Load albums, and it's where it sounds his best for me. My favourite songs are The God That Failed, and Nothing Else Matters. My least favourite songs being Holier Than Thou and A Wolf and Man, which were just songs I just never really got into that much. A lot of you will already know what's going to be in fifth place if you had been listening quite carefully. You'll have heard before I said that the first four were my top four, which means with the albums that we've already said, fifth place must be Load, and it is Load. It's an album which I think has actually probably grown on me. I didn't like it very much at first, but it's grown on me a lot. It's where we first start to see them really sort of venturing away from that metal style, and a lot of people say that's selling out. I don't think it is at all. I think actually if they were going to sell out, they'd make a Black Album Part 2. They wouldn't come out and make sort of art rock songs like The Outlaw Torn and country songs like Mama Said, because that's completely not what the Black Album was about. I think this is just them thinking they've peaked in metal and they want to take a different approach, and I actually respect that. And I think it took a lot of I think it was quite a big move to go away from that, because I think they knew that a lot of people were going to get annoyed. Maybe the haircuts were unnecessary, but that's such a minor detail, it's not even worth mentioning. The positives for this album are, again, like with Reload and the Black Album, the production is fantastic. Again, on the vocals, there's some really good vocal effects. It's kind of the same sorts of things as Reload, except it's a little bit better. The songwriting is just that bit better. I really like the blues feel. It's got more of a blues approach than Reload, which is a bit heavier. The blues feel, actually, especially on 2x4. 2x4 is a great song, and I really like the drumming on this album as well. I think what I really like about Lars, I always have done, is he can play technical and he can play fast, but he always plays with a lot of character, and that's very apparent on this record and on the Black Album as well. I probably should have mentioned that. I think the high points on this album are very, very high. The reason why it's not gonna push into those sort of top four places, not just because the top four are absolute classics, but because it's not consistent like the other albums. The low points are a lot worse than not even that they're worse than the other low points on the other albums, but that there's more of a difference between the low points and the high points on this, which I think is not it. I always like consistency in an album, and also 14 songs is a lot. Again, it could be cut down a little bit. You could definitely combine this and Reload. Sort of some of the better songs on this, some of the better songs from Reload. Make one slightly longer album, and I think that would be would have been a much better idea. But I do have to say they do pull off this new style quite well. For their first album in this kind of field, I think they do a really good job. My favourite songs, well, The Outlaw Tone is my favourite. I think it's fantastic, and Until It Sleeps as well is also up there. I actually don't know which one I prefer. I think they're both brilliant. And Until It Sleeps is a really emotional and sad song. My least favourite songs, however, would be Mama Said and Ronnie. Ronnie, I just think is, I never really got it that much. It's a weird song. It's a really weird song. Okay, so we're into the big four now. The big four records. The first four records. And the first of which, the debut, is what is going to be in fourth place, because Kill 'Em All is, whilst I love it, I just don't think it stands up to the next three. You know, it's a great thrash metal album. It's probably their only pure thrash album they've done. I think it is anyway. I've always said that. The next albums all had more progressive elements. But you know, I think that kind of, whilst it's great to see, it's really it's quite a fun album to listen to. It's very energetic and raw, and that's what thrash is all about, really. But I think it's also, you also have less to talk about than in the next few albums. You know, the songwriting is quite good actually for their age. Some of the lyrics are not great. But you know, thrash metal is not about the lyrics. It's about the solos and the riffs and the fast drumming, and it has all of that. And I think actually one of the most impressive parts of the album is Anesthesia pulling teeth, which is it's quite a big move, I think, to go and make a 4-minute bass solo on your first album. Really, I think they had quite a lot of clearly a lot of confidence to go out and try that on the first album, and it shows a sign of things to come. You know, clearly Cliff Burton wanted to take them in a very theatrical sort of destination, and I think what's good about this album, what's nice, is you get the sort of the leftovers. I know there's a bit on Ride the Lightning as well, but majority of what Dave Mustaine wrote with the band is on this album, and I don't think they're necessarily the best songs. I never buy into this, or the best songs with Dave, but it's cool to hear that sort of early work. The album is, I mean, the production isn't amazing, but I think it actually does the album a favour by not being amazing. I think if the album had been really sort of pristine and sparkly, it wouldn't have had the same effect, and it does have a great effect. It's really, you know, it's almost difficult to listen to in one go because it's so tiring. It's not difficult, it's actually really easy, but I think if the songwriting wasn't so good, if it wasn't played in such an enjoyable way, I think it would be difficult to listen to. But you know, I don't think anyone, if you like metal, I think most people who like metal have a soft spot for this record, because it's just so hard to dislike it, because you know, there's nothing pretentious about it. There's nothing like this, and they're clearly not trying too hard. They're just having fun, and the music is actually pretty good to go with it. And obviously, thrash metal arguably wouldn't exist without this anyway. You know, this and the sort of Show No Mercy and the other sort of early thrash albums like this played a big role in establishing the genre, which I think we can all be very thankful for, because it is a great genre. My favourite songs on here are Seek and Destroy, as overplayed as it is. I do love Seek and Destroy. I think the riff's fantastic, and also I think I'm gonna say Whiplash, just because it's you know, it's such an aggressive song. And my least favourite song, you know, as cool as it is to include it, Anesthesia has to go there at the bottom, because you know it's obviously not a normal song. And then I think if I had to choose a sort of second to last, it's very difficult, but I would probably just go with Metal Militia, just because it just seems to be just has less about it than the other tracks on the album. Podium now with third place, the bronze medal position, and I want to keep this sort of a bit quick because the video is getting a bit long now. But in third place is Ride the Lightning, the second album. this was the first album which I truly fell in love with. So it always has that in my heart. You know, there's some fantastic progressive moments on here. The title track, and the Call of Cthulhu, and Fade to Black as well. But while Fade to Black is up there with my favourites, I think the thrash moments are great on this. Fight Fire with Fire is such a thrilling start to the album, and Creeping Death is one of my favourite. Well, all of these albums are like one of my favourites, but Creeping Death is like top 5 or 6 for me. It's such a fantastic song. Obviously, Fade to Black is beautiful. I applaud sort of going that extra mile, including the acoustic guitars, the birth of the Metallica ballad, you know, and also, and For Whom the Bell Tolls is not really a thrash song, but it's very heavy. It's such a heavy song. I love the mid-tempo tracks they made like that, you know, Eye of the Beholder, Thing That Should Not Be, on the new album, stuff like Dream No More and Now That We're Dead. It's you know, everyone likes For Whom the Bell Tolls, right? It's such a good bass line. But yeah, I think, you know, the album is amazing. A lot of people say it's the best. The only reason I put it third is because I think Trapped Under Ice and Escape, although I think Escape is a really actually underrated song, I think it's a really good song. But those two are clearly not on the same level as the other tracks, in my opinion anyway, which is why it falls down to third and not into the top 2. My favourite songs, obviously my least favourite are what I just said with Trapped Under Ice and Escape. My 2 favourites are Creeping Death and Fade to Black. I think, you know, there's so many essential tracks on here. It's hard to narrow it down to 2, but there you go. So, the runner-up in our album countdown is Master of Puppets, and for a long time this is my favourite Metallica album. A lot of people think it's the essential metal album. I understand where they're coming from, because it is a masterpiece. It's so, you know, everything is so, it comes together so beautifully. You know, it starts with Battery, it ends with Damaging. They're great bookends. Some people say they sort of Damaging kind of lyrically and conceptually follows on from Battery. I'm not sure exactly how true that is, but either way, you know, they're great start and end tracks. They're quite similar instrumentally, but you know, what is there to say that hasn't been said about the album already? You know, Master Puppets, the song, is one of the all-time greatest. You know, the riff is fantastic. The sort of interlude, the slow section is beautiful, and the lyrics are great. "Shot your breakfast on a mirror" is one of my favourite lines I think ever. The lyrics are probably where James probably peaks on this Injustice sort of lyrically. Orion's a fantastic instrumental. We're really starting to see more of Cliff's kind of orchestral and theatrical side to his music. He's obviously, you see that coming out a lot in sort of this album and the one after it. I mean, this sort of stands the benchmark for so much metal, progressive metal and thrash metal as well. It's just essential. My favourite 2 tracks are Master Puppets and Battery, and my least favourites would be The Thing That Should Not Be and Leper Messiah. So that just leaves one more album to take the top spot, the gold medal, and that is And Justice for All, which is, for the record, my favourite album of all time. I cannot fault this album. Complexity wise, it's their most complex work, especially the title track. You know, there's so many different parts of this, and To Live Is To Die as well, which actually is a really beautiful piece of music. It's obviously a tribute they have all together, I would say. Dyer's Eve as well, my favourite Metallica song, is very heavy, very fast. The drumming is fantastic in that song. Definitely that's his best performance. All the songs on here are great, even Eye of the Beholder, which I know gets a lot of stick, but it's a great example of that third sort of chugging, sort of mid-pace song. I mean, okay, the production leaves a bit to be desired. You know, you could have more. The bass could be louder, for example. I guess that is a problem, but I actually quite like the tinny sound because I think something about it just brings out the best in the music. And obviously one, you know, I can't really say much about one, definitely hasn't already been said, but it's truly epic. You know, the ending is you know, it's fantastic with the drums and the, you know, proper thrash ending, and the actual song is very sad if you watch it with the video as well. The video is, I think, also one of the best videos of all time. Yeah, the song, I can't fault it. It has, you know, I looked at my top 10 Metallica songs the other day, and like half of them were on this album. I just think it's an incredible record, and my life wouldn't be the same without it, I don't think. I think it was a great tribute to Cliff. My favourite songs for this are Diet's Eve, sort of followed by One, and since it's my favourite, I'm also going to give a shout out to a third song, The Frayed Ends of Sanity. Is my third choice. If I had to choose the least favourite, I would say The Shortest Straw and Eye of the Beholder just after that, but I think that's giving a disservice to the album because it's fantastic. Okay, so now there you have it, my ranking of the 10 Metallica studio albums. Just in case you're interested, I would probably put Garage Inc. in between the Black Album and Hardwired Self-Destruct, so it would take that 7th place, but I just thought it was a good time to do this since we're still in Metallica mode, or at least I am, and they've now released 10 studio albums, so it was quite a nice sort of point to do this on. At some point in the future, I'm going to be starting up my classic review series, hopefully every Sunday or maybe every other Sunday or something, and I think I'm going to start, now you know my favourite Metallica album, I'm going to start with that, although this isn't a Metallica channel, so in between then and after then you can expect to see far fewer Metallica videos. But once again, go and check out my review of Hardwired Self-Destruct while you're here. If you haven't already done that, it's in the description, and I will see you next time for whatever video is next.